But what comes from that place of not understanding is a difficulty to endure. Because we have this belief that it's okay not to know, but you better go find out. We have it all at our fingertips now, right? Anything you want to know, you just go to Google and try to find out. So we don't have to endure ignorance. We don't have to endure immaturity. We don't have to endure not knowing. And the endurance is actually where our character is forged. Because it's in the endurance that we become dependent, that we will be taught what is needed when it is time for it to be used. First, all this talk about living water seemed to go right over this woman's head, as it often does with each one of us. Let's just be honest. There are things we read in Scripture, things we even hear from God that just right over our head. That's not a negative, it's just a reality. We've kind of got to get over trying to define all this stuff and just be honest about it. Jesus speaks of things that we first try to grasp through our experience. And that's where we usually go wrong. Jesus told Nicodemus, you must be born from above. And Nicodemus says, how can a man be born when he is old? How can he enter a second time into his mother's womb and be born? Jesus says, be born again. And he immediately doesn't say, he's talking about something I don't understand. He says, well, I came from my mother's womb the first time. Are you trying to tell me I need to go back there a second time? Yeah. We look at it and say, that's foolish. So are a lot of our answers. We can't answer God's questions by our experience. Nicodemus wasn't hearing Jesus because he was trying to understand Jesus' words through his own experience and his own expectations. Jesus then asked him a question that was more difficult to hear than it was to understand. Jesus said, are you the teacher of Israel and do not know these things? He was leading Nicodemus to relinquish his understanding and his expectations and his experience, and to open his heart and his mind to Jesus. We can't hold on to what we have and believe that we will still be able to take hold of what God desires to give. I know I ask this often, but I'll ask it again. Isn't your view of God, your belief of God, your relationship with God much different today than it was the day you started? I pray that it's more different, that it's far different a decade from now than it is today. None of us have arrived. We will be like Him when we see Him, but until then we are journeying on with Him, which means just like we learn literally in school, we learn spiritually. Precept upon precept upon precept. It doesn't mean what you once believed was wrong. It means it was early on. And now it's had additions and additions and additions. If all we know is what we've experienced, we know very little. We have to let Him build upon each one of those places. But we have to have our hearts open instead of being afraid that we'll be proven wrong, that we recognize, I need more. Jesus was simply leading Nicodemus to relinquish his heart and his mind completely to Jesus. Paul said in Philippians chapter 3, verse 13, that there was simply one thing that he did, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead. In Isaiah chapter 43, verses 18 and 19, God said, forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. Throughout the Bible, we have people who heard from God, followed God, but then when God desired to lead them further, they balked, thinking that what they had known was all there was for them to know. Paul said, again, Philippians 3:13, I forget what is behind. God said in Isaiah 43, forget the former things. We have to begin learning that growing in knowledge means laying down prior knowledge, that going higher means leaving where we've been, that growing in maturity means stop calling what once was mature, that it's still mature. There's more maturity to grow into. If we don't forget what was, we will never embrace what is. It's just a reality of how God does things.